What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. It's a little cloudy and overcast, and cold, but I'm going to continue to work on this, try and get the dashboard figured out for this thing. I am possibly going to work on the firewall. I don't know if I'm going to show that, but I got to get the dashboard figured out so that I can figure out where the heat and air is going to mount on the firewall so that I can move the firewall over. So I'm going to try and modify the two heater boxes that I have to make one heater box out of the two, because I need the fresh air vent off of the original heater box for the Veloster, but I need the heater core and the AC evaporator core off of the Genesis. I need that entire box and everything. So let me flip this camera around and show you what I'm going to start doing. So what I'm working on doing is I'm going to need to use this half, so everything from here over from the Genesis, because the height of the box is different. And then I'm going to need to use this piece, because this piece is what lines up to the fresh air vent on the car, and this one's not going to work. So I'm either going to have to cut this one and mold it onto here, or I'm going to have to shorten the box. I need to shorten the box because the box is much longer than this one. So you can see that's the length of that one. That one's much longer. I'll stick them side by side. Well, if it'll stand up, but it's hard to tell. But looking at them, you can tell it's much longer. It's about 2 to 3 inches longer. So, and that's because of all the space in between here and here, and here and here. So I'm gonna try and modify those two, and then if I can get those working, then what I'm gonna wind up doing is, this is the dash frame out of the Genesis. I need these supports right here for the center of the dash for the Genesis. I'm not worried about the glove box, but I do need these mounts, and I might need these mounts for the heat and air unit. I might need 2 of those, and then one of the ones off the Veloster frame. And then I may have to change the steering wheel mount. I might be able to modify the 2 steering wheels to make the Genesis steering wheel mount the way that the Veloster steering wheel mounted. Or if I can't do that, then I'll have to take this plate off and weld it onto the Veloster bar. And then I got to figure out what I'm going to do with the dash pads. But I'm more concerned with the electronics and the mechanics working than I am with cosmetics. So right now I'm more focused on getting the mechanics and the electronics working. All right, so there was only 3 screws to remove this blower motor assembly, fresh air intake assembly. And that was a screw coming in from the back, screw right here, and a screw right here. So it was right there, and right there. And now I'm going to take this one apart. All right, so I think this is going to save me a lot of work. I was able to modify the Veloster heat and air box to get it to sit down. I'm pretty close. I'm still about a 1/2 inch too high with the box, but I think all it is that it just needs to rotate in. I don't think that the box is too high because everything's lining up on the firewall. I just can't get it to roll the rest of the way in because there's 2 humps on the transmission tunnel, and there's a little spot where there's a raise right here in the air box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and knock those bumps down just a little bit to get this thing to roll into where it belongs. And if I can get it to roll in where it belongs, and I can get the dash where it belongs, that eliminates a lot of my problems. And then the only thing that I have to do is move the brake booster over. I won't have to mess with any of the other part of the firewall, which I am super excited about because I don't want to cut all that crap out if I don't have to. And we'll just see how that goes. But I think this is going to work. So, yeah. I'm going to try and keep fitting this and getting it to work. And then if I can get this to fit the way that I want it to, what I'm going to wind up doing is I'm going to wind up removing this upright and that upright. And I'm going to take the ones off the Genesis, and I'm going to bolt them in and then weld them to the bar. And that'll get me everything where I need it to have it. And I can start mocking the dash on here and figuring out how I'm going to do the dash. All right, everybody, I've been working on this, trying to decide how I'm going to do this dashboard for the last 2 days. Worked on it for about 10 hours yesterday. I'm about 4 hours deep today. And The main reason is because once I start cutting this stuff, there's no going back because it's plastic. So I have a feeling I've got a pretty good game plan of what I'm going to do. But what I'm going to wind up having to do is piece some pieces together and then fiberglass the dash together, and I'll just have a fiberglass dash. It's not how I wanted to do it, but all my other methods of trying to create a dash that's going to be functional and still look good by using just one dash or the other, they're not coming out right. So I'm going to have to piece the two dashes together, fiberglass over top of the seams where I piece them together, and then just paint the whole dash and fiberglass the whole dash. And like I said, it's not what I want to do, but it'll look good in the end. It is what it is. All right, I've been working on this thing for a while, and I think I'm ready to start cutting the Veloster dash. I've already cut up the Genesis dash. This is a piece out of the Genesis dash. I cut the entire center ring out of it. This is going to get molded into the center right here. So what I'm going to do, these two pieces pop off, and it's just this little plastic frame. So it's just this back piece. And what I'll wind up doing is cutting right here and then gluing it in from the back side to hold it, and then I'll fiberglass it on the back, and I might fiberglass it on the top depending on how good of a finish I get. I'm probably going to wind up having to fiberglass it no matter what, because I got to do a lot of modifications to here in the center. So I have to do a lot of modifications to the center of the dash, because the Genesis dash in the Genesis sat lower than it does in the Veloster compared to the Veloster dash sitting in the Veloster. It sits about 2 inches higher. So I'm having to make up that difference in the center console area. So I've chopped up this entire freaking Genesis dash. It's in probably 50 freaking pieces right now. It's completely destroyed, but I've got the pieces that I need so that I can put this back together with the Veloster dash. And that's where I'm more than likely going to have to fiberglass all this together. So let me show you what else I've done. So this is for the instrument cluster. Now I could use the original instrument cluster fitting for here, but the instrument cluster for the Genesis is a little bit smaller, and it leaves a gap around it, and I don't want that. So what I've done is I've cut the entire instrument cluster section out of the Genesis dash, and I'm going to mold it into this one to get it to fit so that I don't have any gaps around that. And then the other thing that I have to do is I have to cut this hole right here so that I can put that sensor there. So there's enough room in there for me to open it up to that size hole. So I'm going to open it up to that size hole and then clip this in, and that'll get that sensor completed. Then I'm going to cut this and get it set, and then that'll get my speaker and the torque meter and the hazards and the passenger bag airbag light off. Then I'll cut this and get this sitting in there, and then I'll start working with the center, because the center is going to be the hardest part. So let me walk out to the car and show you what I've done in the car. So out here in the car, you can see that I cut the uprights off of the frame, the dashboard frame for the Genesis, and this is where you can see that it's about 2 inches different, about 2 inches away from where it was. The Genesis bar sits down here when I have it bolted in right here. So what I'm going to wind up having to do is I'm going to have to stretch this a little bit to get it to line up with the Veloster dash. So the top of this, I'll have to build like a little cubby or something there. But I'm going to chop out the front of the center of the Veloster dash and have it meet up with this. And then it'll be all Veloster dash. So it'll have the Veloster glove box and whole passenger side of the dash. It'll have the center of the Genesis, the center console of the Genesis. I'm going to still try and incorporate the V piece back into the car. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, but I'm going to try to. And then the rest of the dash is going to be the same except for where the instrument cluster goes. I'm going to try and leave everything else untouched. But this is where it's sitting so far. I mean, in worst case scenario, if I had to make a complete fiberglass dash without modifying the Veloster dash, so be it. I've got the pieces that I could make a full fiberglass dash. I don't want to do that, but I can if I have to. All right, so there, I got one problem solved. On to the next one. So I think the next thing I'm gonna do is cut this out for the top. All right, everybody, so there is the rough fit of the torque meter and the hazard light and the passenger airbag on off switch. So I still have to fit the steering or the instrument cluster piece. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get everything else fit to the car first before I do that, because I don't want to mess with that structural integrity until I get everything else lined up. So the next thing that I need to do is I'm gonna have to figure out how I'm gonna cut this, because now if I don't tip the entire damn dashboard over, let me try and redo this. Sorry for the crappy camera work. So I got to figure out where I'm going to cut this and get rid of this control unit, and how I'm going to mold this, because I want to try and keep at least the vents. I may not use anything below the vents. I'm not going to use this, and I'm not going to use the traction control light because I got a different button that goes over in the kick panel over here. So I am going to get rid of this heating and air unit, and I'm going to get rid of the radio here. I'm going to put the Genesis radio in here. So I don't know, this could get interesting. We'll see. Okay, so now I've got the dashboard back in here. You can see I've got the torque meter and the speaker and everything in there. It's at a weird angle. I don't know if I like that, because I'm not going to be able to see it. I may need to drop that down to pitch it so I can actually see it, because right now it's pointing up. I wouldn't be able to even, that'd be a totally useless gauge. So I may wind up pitching that down into the dash. I'll have to see what happens. But anyway, if I get that sitting right, so I may just drop that down into the dash, and that may take up some of the room from where the radio is. So I may just cut this straight through and let it come in forward more, and then just fill in the back with fiberglass. Because I'm going to have to do a lot of fiberglass work to get this thing where I need it to be. Now, the other thing that I'm going to need to be able to do is essentially have the center console sit where it is currently, and then get this bracket lined up, which it is. And then I have to make way for this. So that's what I was talking about as far as I'm going to have to cut the center of the dash. So I think that's exactly what I'm going to do, is cut the dead center of the dash. And I'll probably wind up cutting the very bottom of the V and getting rid of the heat and air unit. And then that'll give me room to drop this down, and I'll only have to fill in a small spot, and I can do that with fiberglass. So I think that's actually going to work out pretty decent, hopefully. We'll see how it goes. So I still have a whole lot more of cutting and fitting to do, but it's starting to come along. So I've got the center of the dash somewhat started. I still got to figure out how I'm going to blend all this in. I'll probably just fiberglass everything from here down, and then I'll just chop off the vents right there. And then I'll drop this down, and then I'll just fill in that center space with I don't know, I'll probably just be a flat piece of fiberglass. I might build a little cubby hole there. I don't know, something, maybe like a phone holder or something like that. But we'll see what happens. But I've got the original heat and air for the Veloster in here, so I'm not going to be changing that part of the firewall. I'm going to have to just modify the hard lines that came off the Genesis. So I'll have to modify those and get them to run different in the engine compartment. But the dash is coming along. I got a lot more work to do before it's anywhere close to complete, but It's getting there. I was terrified of cutting into this dash, and now that I've started cutting into it, it is what it is. I'm going to wind up doing a lot of fiberglass work and getting everything to fit to where everything's smooth. I'm going to reuse the original Veloster kick panel and the original Veloster glove box and side piece right here. And I'm gonna try and use as much of the V piece that went here as I can. Like I say, it'll probably get chopped off right here. I'll have it like rounded. I'll make it look nice, but I'll have to modify the hell out of it to get it to work too. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, and I've got the center console bolted in. This is bolted in. I don't have it bolted to the support just because I don't have the screws up here. But I'm going to put the screws in here and screw it together when I go to fiberglass it. And I'll fiberglass it with everything bolted into place. Obviously, I won't have the heat and air unit in here or any of the wiring in here when I'm fiberglassing. But I'll start laying fiberglass on this and get this dash completely finished. Once I get the dash completely finished and get everything set the way that I need it, then I'll move the brake pedal over, get it squared away, and then I'll start working on making sure my wiring's going to go through the firewall correctly and make sure that I can wire up, rearrange my wiring on the dash for everything. I shouldn't have to move a whole lot. The only stuff that I should have to move is for the heat and air because the plugs are in different locations, but all the plugs are still on that unit. And I think I have to add a port for the ambient air temperature because the Genesis has automatic climate control and the Veloster did not. So I'll have to add a suction line off of the air handler so that it can get a temperature reading off the sensor that mounts right here. But I'm more than likely going to chop these off because this is for this panel and I no longer have that panel. And I'll chop that one off as well because I don't need it. So the only stuff that I need is what's on the inside of these rails. So everything from these rails in and from this rail in. So I'll chop that off, chop the other one off, leave everything else on there. I'll make some extensions to go from where it is currently up to here so that I can actually weld it to this bar. So I'll get it welded into the bar and get all that squared away. Once I get that, I'll get that welded in first before I start fiberglassing, and I'll get that all set because that's going to determine how my dash is going to sit when I do the fiberglass. So it's coming along slow and steady, but I'm going to keep cracking at it and see what I can get done. All right, so I'm still trying to cut and fit and get things working out the way that I need to. I'm not sure how this is going to work out. It's not lining up the way that I want it to. I may have to build this out to get it flush with this because this is just, I don't know. It doesn't look good because it's designed for this to sit over top of this, and the radio is supposed to be sitting back here, and then the AC control mounts in here, so it looks a lot better with that stuff, but it ain't gonna look right with this. So I may have to reapproach this, like trim this to where it pulls forward to where this actually sits behind it. I don't know. I got to figure something out to make it look a little better. But I'm making good progress on this. With all of that, with all of this portion being put in here, now I can put the radio, the push button start, the heat and air controls, the shifter cover, and all that good stuff. So there's the shifter cover. And then there's the push button start and the heat and air. And that all hooks together like so. And then the radio sits right there. And then I'll have this open area, but I'm going to drop this down a little bit. So I'll still have a pretty big open area. What I may do is make it to where I can put my phone in there for GPS or Bluetooth music or whatever. I don't know. It's got an iPod jack back here, but I may move that up here and make it to where I can just plug my phone in right here. I don't know. I'll figure it out. All right, so I've got the whole dash in here. Here's the factory knee bolster, dash panel, dash pad. This is the Genesis center console, Veloster center section of the dash. I still got to adjust this. It's going to get pitched down a little bit. Build a cubby hole right here. All of this is factory Veloster. I just got to put the glove box back in there and it'll bolt right in. Everything's factory over there. So really all I messed with was right here in the dead center, and I'm going to have to come up with a better way of doing these because it looks like crap, and I do not like how that looks. So I had to cut the crap out of here to try and get this to clear, and it still won't clear. It's going to interfere with the radio, so I'm going to have to figure out a different way of going about this. But everything else is working out the way that I want it to. So I'll be able to mend all this with fiberglass and get it all smoothed in together. My sensor will still mount there for the ambient air. I'll be able to fiberglass all this together and get it all smoothed out. So I think everything's going to work out pretty good. Now the only big thing left to do to this dash as far as cutting it is doing the instrument cluster setup. So oh, this is a nightmare, but got to keep on trucking. Once I get the dash squared away and get all the wiring laid out on the dash and all that, then I'll move the brake master cylinder mount, which is right there. I'll move it over and move that wiring hole over to where the brake master cylinder is currently. And then I'll just make sure my wiring will run where it needs to run, and then I'll be ready to start messing with the front. All right, so I've been working on the dash a little bit more. I wound up welding this in for temporary. I'm not finished with this side or this side. I've got it kind of how I want it. This one I don't have anywhere near where I want it. And it's still freaking hot. I just burnt my finger. But I'm going to wind up trimming this and bending it down to make this look like a 45 going into this bracket. I'm going to wind up cleaning up this edge of the bracket. So just so that I can make it look cleaner, but it serves no structural purpose. This is just for the radio and climate control support, and it bolts in down here, so not super worried about that. And on the original Veloster, it only had the one support coming down to this side. On the Genesis, it holds both, but you've got the main support going from here to there. Pulling the sides of the car together. You got the brace up here. This is just a support for the control and everything. It may serve as a brace to hold the floor up, but I'm not super concerned about that because it's still going to be full welded in. But these are the beginnings of what my brackets are going to be. But I'm going to go ahead and put the dashboard back in here. Now that I have these, they're welded in place. They're not going to go anywhere. And the entire dash frame is completely bolted in. So I'm going to go ahead and put the dash back in here. And I'm going to start fiberglassing the center where the two pieces join together. And then after I get that done, I'll cut out the top of the dash where I'm going to put the torque meter and drop it down a little bit more and fiberglass it in. Then after I get all that fiberglassed in and done, then I'll mess with the instrument cluster area, because I think I'm still going to change this mount out for the mount for the Genesis. I'll just cut the welds off right here and here and around here, and cut the welds off the bottom, and then do the same thing on the Genesis bar and weld the Genesis one in here. But we'll see. Okay, so I've reinstalled the dash in the center console. I removed all the padding. You can see all the padding that I ripped out right there. But I removed all of that off of here so that I can have a good surface for the fiberglass to work with. So I'm gonna sand all this down and get it rough. Even this stuff that's textured, I'm gonna sand it down and get it rough so that the fiberglass will stick to it. I'm not 100% certain how it's going to do with this, but I'm using fiberglass cloth, and I'm going to cover the whole thing with a sheet of fiberglass cloth, so I should be okay. But like I say, I don't know how it's going to bond to this, but since I'm using a full sheet, I should be all right. All right, guys, I've started working on the dashboard. This is just the first coat of fiberglass that I'm putting on, so I'm trying to build up the center right here. I'm going to get that to build up. I'm going to do maybe 2 or 3 layers before I start molding it to get it how I want it. But like I said, this is the very first layer. So I'm going to let this dry for 2 hours. Come back out here, do another layer, let it dry for 2 hours. So this is going to be a slow process because it takes 2 hours to cure between coats. But I need to do a layer of fiberglass mat with the resin, because this is the fiberglass mat that I'm using, and then that's the fiberglass resin I'm using. So I need to use the mat with the resin, do a layer, let it dry for 2 hours, do another layer of mat with the resin, and let it dry for 2 hours again, and just keep building it up until I get it where I want it. So I'm going to build this up, get it somewhat close to where I want it. Then I'll trim the center of it to get the torque meter to mold in, and then I'll fiberglass it in. Once I get it fiberglassed in, then I'll do the instrument cluster. So I probably won't show any of that. I'll just pick back up when I have the dash done to show you what my final product looks like. All right, guys, I'm more than likely going to stop the video here because it's going to take me the better part of probably 3 or 4 days to get this dash fiberglassed in because of how long the wait time is between layers of fiberglass. So you've got the basic design of what I'm going to do with the dashboard. Like I said just a second ago, I don't think that I'll show me doing all those modifications. I might. I honestly don't know. But that's going to be up to this point what I'm doing for the dashboard. So I'm not to the point where I can do the front end yet. Probably be another week and a half, 2 weeks, and then I'll be able to start doing the front, get the motor in here. So I want to get the dash completely fiberglassed in and everything set. That way when I unbolt it, I don't have to worry about doing any more work to it until I go to put it back in. So I'm going to get all that completed, and then once I get the dash completed, then I'll move the location of the brake booster over. And then once I move the location of the brake booster over, then I'm ready to start fitting the rails and putting the motor in. So really hope you guys will stick around and continue to check out the build. And I'll post updates as soon as I can. But weather's starting to get nicer, starting to get longer hours, so I'm able to get a little bit more work done. So I might start seeing a whole lot more progress on this thing in the next coming weeks, just because my days are getting longer and I can get more done. So like always, if you like what you saw in this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, let your friends see what I'm doing, and I'll catch y'all in the next video. Have a great one.